Hello and welcome to today's video. Now, if you watched my last video, you will already know Rick. You will already know that he's had a little bit of a tumble. This is the motorcycle that the tumble took place on, and today we need to have a look at it. From here, it doesn't look too bad.
No, well, that's not the bit that got hit by the car, unfortunately, Will, but we'll have a look at the bit that did and see if we can put it right.
Excellent, let's get into that. So this is the problem. What happened, Rick?
Yeah, well, basically the car drove right into the side of the bike and threw me through the air, but you can see it's obviously very badly bent the front forks. The frame has taken quite a bash as well. There's a hole in the crankcases where it's ripped the engine mounts out and stuff. So what we're going to do really today is pull it apart and just see, is this fixable? Is it the end of the road for this old girl? I don't think it is, but we need to see what we can do. And obviously with a bike like this, it's not easy to replace things. Quite often you have to repair them because you won't be able to get the bits. So just have a look and see what we can actually do with it.
Absolutely.
Will's going to be my spanner man because I'm incapacitated.
Yes, but you're doing a lot better now. You're moving around.
Yeah, I'm starting to get around.
Been to a few jumbles as well. So
yeah. No, I'm still too poorly to do any work, Will. You'll have to do the work.
Yeah, okay, alright, I've got a working arm. So I guess what we're going to do is we're going to start at the bottom here and work our way up, dismantle it and really investigate what has actually happened, how much damage has taken place. Now, I'm going to follow all the procedures that Rick tells me to take this apart. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll all work because it's obviously not in the state it should be. So I'm going to start by taking off the front wheel and we'll just see how we go. Sideways, but it's not. It's the brake shoes. Well, it seems to be.
It's not really that turn, is it? Jesus. What's the tyre? Yeah. Maybe the tyre's flat, of course. That won't help as much.
No, see, the rim is actually against the forks on this side, so there's no more sideways movement to be had.
No, that's a bit awkward. I can't do anything from this end.
Oh, yeah, we're in business.
Check that out.
That's how strong the grip is on that. Is I can't get that off the mic.
Simply remove front wheel.
Yeah. QD.
QD. There we go, great. Brilliant.
Right, so we've got a front wheel and our mud guard out. It's quite difficult.
Bit of a struggle, wasn't it? Yeah.
How long do you reckon that took us?
Probably about an hour and a half, but that's partly because I forgot that there's 3 wheel bolts that hold it in and Will spotted them, luckily.
Yes,
so you can always trust the owner knows best.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the issue was everything was kind of bent in together, wasn't it? You couldn't get any movement from anywhere. No. And so suddenly the user manual goes out the window, doesn't it? And you have to reevaluate how you're going to take things apart.
That's the thing, because when you've got a bike that's been in a crash, obviously quite a lot of stuff that should come apart normally has now got flattened or twisted in some way, so bits where you'd normally get a spanner or a screwdriver on, maybe there's something bent in the way of that.
Yeah.
Without being this enormous giant that can pull everything straight, you can't do it. Our trouble was the wheel rim was hitting this bit of the fork and the wheel actually had to move sideways by about an inch, so it's already touching the fork now because it's bent in so far.
Yep.
But now we look at it, it's not as bad as it could be in some ways and worse in others. You can see this bit isn't that badly bent, really. Unfortunately, what has happened is that this one has ended up staying put while the whole fork has gone sideways. So there's a little cast piece here, and that's actually bent. So that's a solid cast lump that's now bent. in here. That's happened because this link here is bent. This part of the fork has hit it where it can't bend any further, so there's been nothing for it to do but to kind of go parallelogram shaped and bend sideways. That's tricky. The only good thing is these kind of parts, all these castings, are not cast iron, they're malleable iron, which means that they bend instead of break.
Right.
And it also means that you can heat them and straighten them. So give or take, that's not such a disaster. Not so great, we've got this big S-bend going on here, this is a bit mad, but again, hopefully we'll be okay. When you've got a bend that isn't very acute, not too steep, you may well be able to bend it cold. If you can bend it cold, metal tends to have a memory, doesn't it? And it tends to go back. I always think it's a little bit like, if you imagine that's a piece of metal and these are the grains of the metal, if you bend that metal like that, and then you want to straighten it, it should go back like that. But what happens if you heat it, is the grain all goes funny and then it can't go back in again.
Doesn't remember.
No. And if you lose that memory and you sort of heat it here, say, then you might end up with this S-bend. Whereas if you can do it cold, it'll go back, spring back to where it was.
Yeah.
So it's always worth trying to bend bits cold first. If it's too far, obviously you could crack it, that's no good. And after you've bent it, it's a good idea to get it good and hot and let it cool down slowly and naturally, and then that just kind of gets it all comfortable in its own space again and just normalises it. So there's hope for the forks.
Yes. So now we've got that lot off, what's the next step?
Well, I think take the whole fork unit off and then we'll get the tank off and we'll see exactly what's going on with the frame.
Right, so we've removed the forks and we've also removed the tank. Now, why have we removed the tank, Rick?
Well, we noticed that when you looked at the bike from behind, the petrol tank seemed to veer off to one side, so although we didn't think the frame was particularly badly bent, when you actually look at that top tube, it's bent quite a bit to one side. And we think what's actually happened, given the fact that the front engine mount, here it is, ripped off the crankcase, given that's back in the middle of the crankcase, we thought the whole frame just boinged sideways and come back. But now it looks like where the forks were hit, it bent the frame that way whilst that was still attached, then ripped that off at the last minute. So it bent the down tube slightly this way, that's now gone that way, but that bit's come back to the centre. So it's kind of an odd thing, but you can see what's happened. Good news is they're all what I would call slow bends, so they're all curves, there's not a nasty crease or a fold, so really I think that should be possible to pull the frame back without too much problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the crankcase, that'll either be welded up or maybe new crankcases at the worst. Yeah,
exactly. So we've got all the pieces, so it's a matter of taking it to a decent aluminium welder and seeing what they reckon to it, and hopefully that'll be savable. They're the original crankcases for bikes, it'll be nice to keep them if possible.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
These bits are a little bit more sorry for themselves.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of immediately obvious, but it does look a little bit better now we've got it off the bike.
Yeah.
So this is original paint, you're saying? So you'd love to save that?
Yes, that might be asking a bit too much, but it's basically, we looked at it and there's not too much in the way of creasing again. Again, it's more curves than anything, and obviously when you get something that's completely folded, then that's a difficult problem, but if it's just bent round, you might be able to pull it round. So
yeah, I think so. I think that.
You were saying about the sandbag approach with that.
I think you might well be able to beat that out. Yeah, it'd be lovely if you could save it, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
yeah. The other thing is the forks.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're not familiar with girder forks, they're not really meant to look like that. But again, these are your slow bends, and you reckon that'll be repairable? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, there's going to be. It's always good if you can try and do bend straightening without heat. I said before, I think that the metal has a memory. Some bits of that will need heat without a doubt to sort out, but I think there's nothing too drastic there. The tube hasn't crashed anywhere, so yeah, we can give that a go, I think.
Yeah, Excellent. I mean, in terms of finding another pair of these, what are the chances of finding that?
They are pretty scarce. I mean, they make
Yeah.
quite a lot of these. They do come about. There's probably somebody who's got a row of them in their workshop somewhere.
Yeah.
It's a bit hard talking them out of them. But,
Yeah, you won't get them. You have to ride with these.
But yeah, we'll see what we can do with those.
Excellent, excellent.
So I think that's about it, really. I mean,
Yeah,
thanks very
yeah,
much, Will,
absolutely.
for saving my arms. I've done
You're
a little bit of
welcome.
it, but
Now you're on the mend, we can get her
yeah,
on the
maybe
mend
get her on
as
the
well.
mend as well. Yeah, hopefully.
Excellent. So that's it for today's video. Massive thank you for watching. Sorry about the break, I've been really busy at work. I'm going to do my best to keep it up. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, make sure you give it a like, and I'll see you next time.